Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast and we are back. We are here. We are previewing one of two huge games, which many would say could potentially write what is going to be a really important chapter in the future of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. Helping me talk it through, dissect it all, break it down. I'm joined by three of our favourite returning guests to Last Word on Spurs that are going to most certainly offer some really true insight, emphasis to how big this game is for Spurs in their season. And of course, the latest news and views and clues over the course of the last 72 hours of being Spurs fans in the community. Back alongside me to help me do that, I've got the wonderful George Achillea alongside me. George, how are you? Lovely to see you. Still smiling despite the desperate times this club has put us through. But a big opportunity in store, G. A big opportunity.
Yes. You know, you got to keep smiling as much as you can. Otherwise, you know, you might just fade away into just an existence. So, no, man, I'm good. I'm buzzing for Thursday because, you know, that's all we got to look forward to at the moment. So I'm just kind of keeping my mind focused on that, and obviously happy to be back on here chatting all things Spurs with you guys.
Bless you, G. Thank you so much. I've got to just say as well, and people ask me why am I smiling so much. I have got a 9-day break coming up, and these guys know it. I don't think Ash knows it yet, but we've got a lot of people covering over the course of the next 9-10 days. Richard Crackers Cracknell is at the wheel, as is Lee McQueen. What can go wrong? As long as Spurs are going to keep us going and they're going to keep us entertained, as they always have been this season, what we've got to worry about? Hopefully positive things in store. Back alongside me also, we've got the wonderful charismatic, the brilliant Ashmatic is back on Last Word on Spurs. Ash, lovely to see you. It's a heat wave over in the UK at the moment. It's a heat wave.
Yes, people. Big up, man. Thanks for having me on, Ricky. Big up to the panel. Big up to the chat as always. Make sure you do that lovely stuff. You like, you share, you subscribe. And if you're listening back on audio, please just give us a recommendation to your friends, your sister, your mister, your cousins, your aunt, your uncle, your grandpa. You know the rest. But yeah, man, thanks for having me here, man. Let's get into it, bro.
Pleasure, Ash. It's, as we know, a big week in, of course, for many people out there, the Spurs community. What comes next is what we all want to know. Helping us always try and explain what comes next. He does it himself on his own platform, as well as does Ash and G as well on their respective YouTube channels. I've gone and got Dave back from the Irish Hotspur. Not Dean, by the way, to Jar Wobble, where we had a good laugh about last week. God, that was fun. Dave, how are you? Love to be back alongside me. It feels like a massive week. One of two big weeks for this football club.
Look, it's an absolute huge week for this football club, especially, I think, you know, the importance placed on it now, the fact that we do need to get Champions League football so we can stave off this financial situation that we seem to be getting ourselves into at this moment in time. So it places even more importance on the Europa League. But look, only Tottenham can be in a European semi-final and have this much negativity around them. I mean, but at the end of the day, would you probably have it any other way? We're used to this as Tottenham fans. So look, big game Thursday. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, man, massive game on Thursday. And I think we all want to say at the moment, look, as difficult as this season has been, I mean, all now difficult it's been, because I keep telling you how bad it is every single week. But the reality is, as we know, we've got a massive opportunity on Thursday to, in one or two games, get this club through to a European final, which we've not been able to say for a very long time. So, look, on that point, G, we mentioned the fact Tottenham do face their biggest night of their season so far, as they are going to host, and I've heard some different abbreviations of it this week, so please forgive me. I believe they're being pronounced as Bodo, rather than Bodo. I've been saying Bodo Glimt for a long time, but I think it's Bodo. I might be wrong on that point. We'll go with Bodo Glimt. It's a lot easier, isn't it? Of course, the first leg of the semi-final. It does come on the back of a weekend, G, as you know, where Spurs equalled their record for the most defeats in a Premier League season, being 19, along with the 93, 94 and 2003-04 season. One more, and they will equal the record with a 38-game season from when Peter McWilliams Spurs lost 20 out of 38 in 1912-13. However, they stayed out that year, and McWilliam went on to win the FA Cup in 1921. Is that a good omen for us, G, potentially?
Oh, who knows? We've been trying to cry on for the year-ending one sort of stuff going on, and that didn't work
out. I've dug that out from the graveyard. You have to forgive me, G. I've dug that out from the graveyard. That
My word, what a stat. But to be fair, loads of people pointed out that everything's aligning with the Champions League final, so you never know. Weirder things have happened. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to say about that loss, to be honest with you. It was an expected loss. I still was not expecting the, kind of just how limp we were. And I think the main thing for me, I think everyone was just kind of disappointed in the fact that we finally saw Archie Gray in the number 6, and it kind of just went south very quickly. So, yeah, I don't want to dwell on that game too much because it was going to be Liverpool's all day long anyway for that title. So, yeah, for me, I'm just fully focused on the Europa League on Thursday because we all know the players have been geared on and switched on for that way more recently. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to Thursday.
Yeah, it's a massive, massive game for the football club. And we do know, coming over to you, Ash, that the Europa League is Spurs' one hope, really, of salvaging something from the season with not only a trophy, but Champions League qualification as well, a potential. Look, we know how bad that defeat was to Liverpool. It was the joint heaviest Spurs have suffered in the league under Postecoglou. And it does guarantee that we will finish outside of the top 10 for the first time since the 2008-2007 season where we finished 11th. Just on that point, Ash, you know, for the players now and how difficult it's been for them this season, what they had to go through, just how much could this competition get into a semi-final? How much do you think this could lift the players? Because to be fair, there would be an argument that some of our better performances this season, there's not been many, but they have come in Europe.
Yeah, let's be real, man. This is make or break right now for Spurs. And for a lot of the players, a lot of the staff, the management, a lot of the fans, to be fair, we've all been leading up to this expectation, this moment. And it's the biggest game since the Champions League final when we had against Liverpool that we saw many years ago, man. And we have a real chance to make a difference. 40 years it has been since we've had a European trophy. And I have to quote the Batman, Dark Knight, man, you either die a hero or you live long enough to become a villain. So that's the kind of vibe I've got at the moment. It's do or die for Spurs right now. And these boys have to pick it up. I'm sure they won't need motivating because they themselves, they want Champions League football. They believe they are Champions League heritage type of players.
Yeah.
And so whether we rate them or fans rate them or not, it doesn't matter, man. These guys are going to be up for it. And I think despite what happened against Liverpool, I think every fan went into that game knowing that the way our season was panning out, we wasn't going to get anything up there, if we're being totally honest with ourselves. But you know what? It is what it is. We draw a line underneath it. And we look forward to Thursday, and we have to get a positive result where we score more than 3, because I was watching a Spurs show. I can't remember the name of it. And they actually had a Bodo Glimt journalist or someone that covers them heavily.
Yep.
And he was saying that they're happy to take a 2-0 loss into the second leg or even a 3-1. I said, how greedy? How the audacity? I said, you know what? We need to pummel them. If they're talking like that they think they can overturn a 2-goal deficit, we need to really show them what we're about. And these players, these leaders, these so-called, that leadership group, whoever they are, they need to stand up. They need to be
totally
counted.
Totally agree on that point. And actually not wrong on that point. I actually heard, I think, the same journalist on that point that he was suggesting that they have got a very set way of playing. And despite who comes in and who comes out, everybody knows their jobs. And just on that point, we're going to come on to it shortly, they have got a real decimation of injuries at the moment. They've got a few suspensions in the camp as well. So look, let's be honest about it. We're not going to be facing what would be their ultimate first 11 on the field, but they've still got some very, very good players that can hurt us. And I think you make a really important point there, Ash, that I think for them, they want to be in that second leg, going back, of course, as we know, to an artificial pitch where a lot of the teams have struggled really to be able to play them on there. They're no mugs. They've beaten like Galatasaray. They've beaten Lazio on the journey. And I think in the past they've had some decent results as well. In Turkey as well in the previous season. So they're not a bad side. So I think, like we know with Tottenham, I mean, look, having been there for that cup semi-final against Portsmouth all those years back at Wembley, underestimate a team at your peril. Because I do remember playing Portsmouth in the semi-final. Now, a lot of fans going back to that time thought that was a given. And it wasn't a given, as we remember. We got upset on the day. So I think as Spurs fans, we've been bit many 2 times when it comes to semi-finals and thinking we're going to be at a final. There's a lot of work still to do. I think a really important point to bring up, Dave, over the course of the weekend was that, look, Spurs, they made, I think, for the game, 8 changes against Liverpool. It's the most ever Tottenham have made for a Premier League clash. And that can be looked on one or two ways. It can be looked on the fact that there was an opportunity given to some fringe players to maybe show us what they could do ahead of course, maybe potentially featuring in this game. the other notion would be that maybe we've played players there that are maybe being seen as backup players or fringe players or not going to be really in the frame for the Bodo Glimt game. And I just wonder, when it's a first trophy that we're fighting for in over 41 years, we're 3 matches away from the prize. What do the players feel at the moment for you, Dave, at the moment? Because, there's a group there that almost in a way have become normalised to losing. Is that a big, big worry ahead of what we've got 3 games to get to our first, European trophy win in 41 years, if we can bring it home?
Yeah, look, I think it's a huge concern that they're used to losing. But I think what we've seen, especially in the knockout rounds, is players that have been able to completely look like a different team come the Europa League nights, which, to a degree, I sort of question how long you're going to get away with that. I think we might even get away with it now, but I think heading into the final could be where something like that comes back to bite you. I do believe, you need a lot of form to really get over the line in this competition. But look, from a long time ago, since the knockout games, Postecoglou has always prioritised Europe when he's thought about his team selection in terms of for the Premier League. Europe has always taken precedent, and they're playing a dangerous game. But I also wonder how much Daniel Levy is on that, knowing that we need Europe in order to free up some cash flow come this summer. So I think there's a collective inside that they know how important this Europa League is. And look, let's not underestimate Bodo Glimt. I mean, just as much as we were licking our lips at the draw, you think they weren't also licking their lips going Tottenham Hotspur rather than Bilbao Man United, especially with some of our results in Europe down the years? Paços de Ferreira away from home, Vitesse Arnhem away from home, Zagreb away from home, and the most embarrassing one, NS Mora away from home. And they can pull people out of a factory at 7 o'clock to come and play a game and beat us. I mean, a team that are training week in, week out together. And by the way, they've got good togetherness. They clearly know their system and it works. Yeah. That's why they're in the semi-final right now. You underestimate them at your peril, like you said. A team like that has togetherness, that can carry you a long way. Look at Leicester when they won the Premier League. Sometimes you might not have the same quality as everybody else, but if you've got a togetherness and everyone has a desire to achieve the same goal, it can go a long way. Sometimes that can be quality on the pitch. So at the end of the day, I think all the danger signs are there for Tottenham Hotspur. But I'd also argue we don't have a better chance than now in my lifetime to ever, reach a Europa League final. You look at the amount of players that they're missing. I think the fact that they're coming to our pitch, they wouldn't be used to stadiums and this pitch is the size of ours. I think if we can stretch that pitch, do what we've done against Forest, get wide, put balls into the box. I think we really have to go and score goals. Our stadium hosts more than the capacity of their entire city. So we should be using that to actually intimidate them, create a really good raucous atmosphere, and hopefully the players respond to it. And if we can take goals there, and I think this is literally comes down to who's going to take advantage of their home leg, because, to Ash's point, they will fancy themselves at home, by the way. They're playing on an artificial pitch. It's a complete different game altogether. The bounce of the ball is different, the speed of the ball, the skid of the ball off the surface. It's a complete different game, but to them, it's a game they're used to. So they will be well used to it. So for me, I just think if we can rack up 3 goals in the first leg, try and keep a clean sheet, then they're in a position where they have to come out. It opens us then to try and hit them early and really kill the tie away from home. So I think that's the way we really need to approach it. And I just hope the players don't lose their nerve or don't lose their legs in this game. They have to come out. They have to show a bit of confidence, a bit of fight, and a bit of belief in what they're doing. They've shown they can do it, so hopefully they can pull another one out of the bag.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And I think you make some really important points there, Dave. And we know, obviously, of course, Spurs' struggles with artificial pitches in the past. I mean, look, no one will forget, obviously, that game we had at Tamworth recently where, you talk about players that are being pulled out of services in different industries. We had one that was a Zara assistant that managed to get
man the match.
Man the match against us. So I think generally how people play against Spurs at the moment. I mean, if you're to steal Cracker's phrase, Cracker's sorry about there. If you're a butcher, a bread maker, a candlestick maker, you maybe you're on course for a decent game against Spurs, and you could have yourself a move to the Premier League. Who knows? It's a crazy time at the moment with regards to playing Tottenham. And I think it's fair to say that news around Spurs at the moment, around kind of what the future looks like, has been one of the things that has been a real, I'd say, big concern around the community at the moment. I think we all know that we're going into a summer of real uncertainties at the moment. We have uncertainties as to who the manager's going to be. We have uncertainties as to who the backroom staff are going to be. We have uncertainties as to how the footballing operations are going to be. There's been obviously recent reports that Scott Munn is expected to be departing the club. We've got obviously Vinay coming in as a new CEO, which is going to take place around June time. And, the news that has come through over the course of the last 24, 48 hours will definitely be worrying to some Spurs fans. And a report out there from the Telegraph, which I'll just bring into focus, is that Tottenham are facing the prospect of having to sell to buy this summer, despite the fact the club could spend over 200 million without breaching profit and sustainability rules, PSR. Without a significant injection of cash from owners ENIC, Spurs are understood to be facing a tough summer of trading, which is threatening to severely affect the club's head coach, whether that is Ange Postecoglou or a new appointment. Champions League qualification through winning Europa League would improve the situation. However, Atletico Madrid target Christian Romero or at least one other leading player may have to be sold in order to generate transfer funds for the club this summer. Now, Tottenham were one of the Premier League's highest spenders last summer, and according to the latest set of accounts that were first broken down by the likes, as I think many know, like Kieran Maguire that we got on here, the club's net transfer debt money owed to Spurs, minus money they are still to pay out, was 279.3 million. That puts the club and those responsible for trying to improve the squad in an incredibly difficult position, particularly coupled with Tottenham's wage structure, which, as we know under Daniel Levy, is one of the most strictest in Europe. So it does mean for Tottenham that there's going to be a concern as to how they are going to be dealing in terms of the summer transfer window. And if that approach is going to be sell to buy this summer, there is going to be question marks raised around the number of players' futures. As we mentioned, Christian Romero being heavily linked, as we know, with a move to Atletico Madrid being one of them. We also know that Yves Bissouma, who we'll come on to later in the show as well, really phased out of the picture for Tottenham, is understood to be a target for a number of Saudi Pro League clubs. And also Richarlison, who once again has had an injury-hit season, is also understood to be back on Everton's radar as they look to bring him back to the football club. Now, ENIC provided 121 million in owner funding since their takeover in June 2024, the equivalent of just 5.3 million per season. The majority of that came from a 97.5 million share issue in May 2022, which had initially been announced as being worth up to 150 million. Since ENIC's 97.5 million share issue, a total of 13 English clubs have received more owner funding, while the owners of Tottenham's rivals Aston Villa have poured over 600 million into that football club since their takeover in 2018. ENIC, just to be clear, they did invest 35 million into the club in January, but Chairman Daniel Levy made it clear, obviously in this recent financial statement, Tottenham will not spend the money they do not have, despite their ability to do so within the PSR guidelines. I want to come to you if I can on this first, Dave, because you came into the green room, and I hope you mind me saying it, before we even spoke about Tottenham. You were quite demoralised by this story, which again, whether it's true or not, it maybe is another question, but just the feeling at the moment where we should be really focusing on a massive couple of weeks for the football club, once again, is being derailed around the fact that it feels the football club may have to sell before they can buy.
Do you know what, Ricky? When I first seen the article, to be honest with you, I wasn't even going to read it. I see that coming out the back of every single season. Tottenham have to do this for this reason, for that reason. But then I went and listened to Simon Jordan, who, you know, to be fair, I know a lot of people may not like him, but he's fairly accurate when it comes to Tottenham and Daniel Levy to a large degree. And from my whole understanding of the situation is that cash flow will be the problem this summer, that we don't really have. We cannot move to buy anybody or bring anybody in, even I would even argue probably in terms of manager as well, until we sell players, because, you know, I think people are coming and looking for like 250 million or something like that, you know, that we owe out in the historic transfers and stuff like that. So, and in terms of Daniel Levy, apparently all his money is tied up despite his wealth, and same with the ENIC group. So if the money doesn't come from them and it doesn't come from an outside investor into Tottenham, then this summer is going to be a long, painful summer for Tottenham Hotspur. But also, on reflection, I actually think it actually explains a lot of questions that I've had over the last couple of years of what's happened at Tottenham Hotspur, especially under Ange Postecoglou's tenure. You know, Levy, the fact, look, we all know with Daniel Levy, he's been seeking investment, outside investment, since lockdown. So he's been well aware, as a financial guy, as an accountant, that this time was approaching at some point down the line. So he was well aware of that. Even back in April 2024, he said this: the club requires a significant increase in equity base to fulfill its long-term potential, and it is in discussions with potential partners, which shows he's had some idea of what was coming down the line. It also explains that why in 2 transfer windows, when, Postecoglou's been screaming for help, especially this January, that we've only really seen Danzo and Solanke, who are only the 2 players that were really brought in to try and improve the first team, and the rest were all signings with potential for the future, because they knew, again, we were approaching this point, and that's why they've gone and signed all players with potential to try and sort of, to a degree, try and future-proof us through this little sticky period that's coming up, try and weather the storm to a little degree. It also explains why Ange Postecoglou has said he's okay with the transfer market and the transfer strategy at the football club. And I remember a few weeks ago, Ricky also said, when you were asking me about Postecoglou, I brought up that a lot of times when he comes out and speaks, he sort of speaks like he's going to be here next season and in the future. Well, I reckon when he's had that interview with Daniel Levy, and it's why the likes of Arne Slot probably didn't take on Tottenham and other managers at the time when we were sounding them out, is because he probably laid out what was coming down the line, the financial implications and what we could do and stuff like that. And that's why Ange probably accepted it. Ange, at the end of the day, wanted to get to the Premier League. He wanted that Premier League dream. So he's probably accepted to try and make it work, which, if that is the case, and he's not making it work, it's even more evidence that he sort of needs to go. It also explains, like I said, why other people have turned away the job, why we ended up at Ange Postecoglou in the first place. I think it also explains why Ange Postecoglou is still in a job, actually. Do we have the money to sack him? Do we have the room to sack him and pay him off? Do we have the room to bring in another manager? And can we bring in another manager when we can't tell him what we have to offer him in terms of the transfer budget and stuff like that? So if you want to know why Ange Postecoglou's still in the job, or anyone has that question, put yourself in Levy's shoes, and there's your answer. It also explains why we only extended Son's contract with a clause and not actually offer him a new contract for the next 2-3 years moving forward, because we clearly don't have the money. It's why Bentancur's contract still hasn't been signed. It's probably why we can't get Romero to commit to a no contract. We probably just don't have the money to offer them as well. But also, the fact that we need to sell before we buy. We're now putting our best players in the transfer window. Now, when we were selling the likes of Bale and Modric, and we were snapping up all the property, and we went 3 transfer windows under Pochettino with no signings, we were told it was so that we could get all this built, the stadium, the training complex, diversify our revenues to allow NFL, boxing, rugby, concerts, Formula One, you name it, plus whatever else they're using it for in terms of conferences, events, abseiling, skywalks, everything else. It's the reason why we've done all this, so that we wouldn't have to sell our Bales and our Modric, so we could match the wages of top clubs across Europe, so we could attract the best players, to come here, so that we could compete on that level. But right now, where we're approaching this summer in terms of having to sell before we buy, we are back round 360, back to square one, where we were when we had the likes of your Bales and Modric's. At the time before that, we were snapping up Lennons, Walkers, Bales, Modric's, people like that, trying to identify young talent that we could identify, build up, and sell on for huge profits. That's the approach we've taken the last couple of seasons. And that's why this club is in such a huge mess. And if this is the case where we're back at this point again, where we were nearly, 15, 16 years ago, then we have no option but then to get down and join change for Spurs to protest, because at the end of the day, if the money ain't there, Daniel Levy has not come out and communicated any of this with the fan base whatsoever. There's been no transparency towards the fan base with this situation approaching whatsoever, which means we've been lied to, which means you've no option but to change for Spurs and try and either put pressure on him to go and get outside investment so we can pivot this summer, or ultimate goal, get him to sell on. Because at the end of the day, if they don't have the cash to take this club forward, what do? We end up back down in Championship, keep selling our best talent. Because if this season is anything to go off by, it's only going to get worse if we can't move this summer and we have to sell our best players.
You know what? On the point that Dave mentions there, Ash, it feels, as we know, a massive, pivotal summer for the football club, which again is still a script to write, because they could still have Champions League football, which again, as we know, brings in a decent amount of income. I think, is in the region of, I think, around 80-90 million that comes into the football club. I mean, yes, what that gets you now in terms of quality player, you may argue it gets you a couple of players for that if you again scout right and you do your due diligence on players. But is it worrying, Ash, in what is a massive week for the football club, a story like that is coming out?
Look, we're just ordinary match-going fans that want to see our team do well. So sometimes financials can go over our heads, and that's why I have to agree with Dave. The ownership, the chairman, somebody has to come out and just make it clear to some of the fans what the road is up ahead.
Well, can I just say, Ash, on that point, just let you carry on.
Yeah.
Daniel Levy might argue he has made it clear, because he has said, obviously, in that recent financial statement that the club cannot spend the money they do not have. So he may argue and say, whether we like it or not, and look, you know how I feel about the ownership and my stance with regards to change for Spurs and wanting change at the football club, there may be an argument there that on that point, you know, this is where
It's
we're
vague,
at.
though, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah.
of course it's vague, but when has it ever? But when has it ever been crystal clear from Tottenham on this point, Ash?
This is the problem. I think he talks he doesn't talk in clear speech where it's understandable for all fans to kind of swallow and digest and get their heads around certain things. Even if we were to get Champions League money, does that relate to this summer's budget, or is it registered in next season's budget? It's things like that we want to make clear. If we won Europa, how much money do we get from Europa? When I read up, it's 35 million. Was 35 million buy-in? Archie Gray was 40 million. So unless you're doing a reading, not all football fans are picking up the FT or the Guardian or the Athletic or doing the research and looking at what we're doing and reading the bits and pieces and realizing that we've been doing Klarna deals all this time. We've got 300 mil on borrowed and borrowed deals. We've got no cash. Everything is all asset based. We've got nothing to really buy players with. So expectations of fans, you know, can be controlled. When I was screaming, when I first came on the show, I was screaming, Eze, let's get Eze. Who would have known I was deluded, bro? Do you know what I'm saying? They could have just let me know that, right, that's not happening because we just don't have the cash. And I was screaming and screaming, living in fantasy land, thinking we're going to get these type of players when we're nowhere near it. And the way they made it out as well, when we got Bergvall and we got Archie Gray, and then they were like, oh, guys, you know what? They've been doing so well in training that we don't need to buy any other midfielders. Don't worry about Højbjerg going. Don't worry about Skip going, our first team of footballers that will contribute into the current season. We don't need to replace them because these kids right now, they're so they're doing let's be real. Bergvall has done exceptionally well for what was promised. But the point I'm trying to make is, in terms of squad depth, in terms of starting 11, and in terms of kicking on, this is what I'm saying. In terms of kicking on from last season when we got 5th, we were all expecting us to go one step further. The manager to get more players in. These are the type of things that we need to be communicated, Ricky. That's what I mean. I'm not trying to be pedantic or trying to be difficult. I'm just talking as a real fan. And so I'm now looking at it thinking, all right, cool. Romero, yes. We know he's not happy. We know there's been links to Atletico Madrid. There's been links to Richarlison, like you just said. Bissouma's another one. Bentancur, there's been light rumors, obviously, about Atletico Madrid, sniffing around with his 1-year contract. How much can we get from him? Does that mean we're going to decimate that midfield? Are we bringing in players to, for those replacements? Or are we going to leave those and say, oh, we're going to get another youngster in? And sold another PR line. That's what I'm saying. The clarity there. And that's why fans are like, oh, look, it's been a great window because we've gotten rid of the deadwood. Remember that last season? We got rid of the deadwood. Yeah. It's the PR, broski. That's what I'm saying. It's the PR. And this is what I don't like. Just be honest with us so we know where we're moving, and then we could just move accordingly. So for me, that's where my biggest worry is. I said, look, we'll get rid of Richarlison. Richarlison will probably go to Everton. We'll get 25, 30 million for him. We spent 60 mil on it. 3 years. I know it's not one goal. 3 years and it's across. But then you're like, where's that money going? That Kane money. Like the Kane money, obviously, that's been spread across 4 to 5 years. But I know the Tell deal is probably tied up in that. That's the reason why we're looking at Tell. But does Tell want to come? Then what? Where's the money then going? Do you understand? If we're not getting Tell, where's that Kane money going? That's what I want to know. Is that going on outside projects? Is it going on hotels? Is it going on golf courses? Is it going on? That's what
But that
I'm
would
trying
have already been laid out for the
Well-
likes of Johnson, Madison, Udebur, stuff like that. The reality is, if we end up, say, selling Romero and get 70, 80 million, that's not
Yeah.
going on one player to replace him with quality. That's being spread to cover all the squad's issues. That's where we are at this summer, unfortunately. Our eggs are all in Europa League basket. It explains why we've seen a lack of care towards the Premier League, in recent weeks, ever since there's been European qualification off the cards in terms of the Premier League. That's why you're seeing everything geared up to the Europa League. I think there's been a collective inside where everyone knows the importance and the financial implication of us getting Champions League next season. If we get Champions League, crisis averted. If we don't, that's where we're going to feel the pain this summer. And the reality is, the only reason why we're in it is because we keep chopping and changing directions. Ricky, you brought up something here, I think, the last time I was on. You said, it's a concern, the amount of rotation at the club in all aspects. You talk boardroom level, in the dugout, you talk scouting departments, different director of footballs, transfers in and out of the football club, coaching staff, etc. All that turnover, all that wasting of money is exactly why we've reached this point here.
I do agree, but in typical Tottenham fashion, as we talk about the finances and have a good a good moan about them, in the background, in typical Spurs fashion, as G is showing us there a little placard to Lucas Bergvall. I can bring in some breaking news that has just dropped from Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. We always seem to get this when we're on air. Why is it always when we're on air we always get the dramatic stuff happen? The great news is, for many out there, I'm sure they'll agree, that Lucas Bergvall has put pen to paper on a brand new contract with the football club, a new 6-year deal, G, to come over to you. That means he'll be here. I say be here. Hopefully he'll be here to see it out till 2031. I think we can all agree Bergvall, probably one of Spurs' most shining lights through what's been a very, very torturous season today. It could end in glory. How big news is that, G, to tie down arguably one of the most exciting players in world football to Tottenham at a time where it does feel there's chaos in amongst us here?
Well, I think it's fantastic. But I think obviously the main thing for him is that I imagine when we signed him last January, he's on, pretty small contract given his age. I think he was probably considered more of a young developing talent. But considering how much he's had to contribute to the first team this season, I'm hoping he's got a contract now that reflects his status amongst the team. Because look, I imagine you guys are probably all the same, right? I think Bergvall is probably one of, if not the first name on the team sheet at the moment, and it's probably going to look that way heading into next season. So yeah, thoroughly deserved contract and someone who I think is going to be really important for us over the next few years.
Totally agree. And just on the point, we have no doubt about it, over the course of this last, 17, 18, 19 months, made some moves in the recruitment department that I'm sure, like many of us, Dave, we would have raised an eyebrow to. But one of, I say very few, but one of the players that we do seem to have got right is the signing of Lucas Bergvall, which did come under, as you know, Johan Langer's tenureship so far in terms of that signing, which maybe for him, it could go on to be one of Spurs's, I don't want to put the knockers on it, one of our best ever players maybe in due course from what we're seeing so far. Does that give us some real encouragement for the future, Dave, that we've tied this young player down for, a 6-year deal? I hope he's excited as us for what these next 6 years are going to bring his way.
Yeah, look, I really hope so. I hope it's not a case that they've tied him down, knowing that now they can ask for whatever fee they want.
I do mean they've tied him down literally so he can't get out, by the way. I don't mean tied down.
I hope that's the case, and it's not a case where one of the big clubs come and we can go, well, 6-year contract, that means give us 100 million, So I hope that's the case. Look, when it comes to Bergvall, I think, it took him a while to adjust, but since then, I think the last few months he's been absolutely superb in that midfield, and you would argue probably one of the only players on the pitch, despite whether it's been a Premier League game or not, actually showing a bit of heart and desire on the pitch, the willingness to try and get around and actually affect the result rather than just sort of be a bystander in games. However, it's been a bit of a double-edged sword. As good as he's been, he did make the AZ Alkmaar two-legged game a lot tougher than what it needed to be. He was at fault for both goals. There was one, he gave a ball away in a silly position against Liverpool, nearly came back to bite us. He'd done the same against Wolves. It went in the back of the net. Same against Newcastle earlier on in the season. I do feel that gets overlooked a little bit when it comes to Lucas Bergvall, and that is an area of his game where he does need to tighten up. learn where to take the risk, and then learn where you need to do. If you're in trouble, learn where you need to go and dribble that ball rather than pass it into trouble. But I think Lucas Bergvall will get there. I think he started off with a great preseason. In preseason, I think what I really seen from him is, you don't really get tackled or pressed in preseason, but you can judge a player with how good he's on the ball, the passes he makes. And I think that's what actually really excited a lot of people, in preseason, that despite it being preseason, he was trying to play them balls forward, play them down the channels and stuff like that. And I think we're seeing that come to the fore. But also, I think the physicality now is there with him. I remember earlier on in the season out in Galatasaray, he got bullied. It really did look like boys against man. But since then, he's been able to hold his own. The physicality is there. And I think that's what's really helping him sort of, succeed now at Tottenham.
Yeah. Many might be surprised by that news, Ash, given, what we've had to go through this season in terms of bad news after bad news, injury after injury, negative result after negative result. Is it nice to find a bit of good news, Ash, in the camp that we've tied down one of Spurs' most youngest, most prosperous players to a new deal and can hopefully lead us through, I think, for him, what's been arguably, hopefully his worst season in a Spurs shirt. Generally for the football club, not him personally. And he'll come out the other side of this. I think it could be a real character building moment for him. He won't have had I hope this will be the only time he's had to go through what he's going through in a Spurs shirt, and this will hopefully toughen him up. Many said he might need his head testing. But many also thought that about when Heung-Min Son signed a new contract under, if you remember, Nuno Espirito Santo, and they were questioning that. So maybe it just shows about Bergvall's mindset that he really hopefully wants to be a success at this football club, Ash.
Yeah, he's a top player, top character, top mentality, young player. Ceiling's really high. And when he came to us, obviously it was Barcelona that were interested in him. And even before he signed his contract just recently, I think it was Borussia Dortmund. They were looking to see his availability. There were other clubs in Italy and Spain that were sniffing around him. And so it was very important that Spurs, got this contract sorted out for his future. I'm not mad that he made mistakes this season. He's young, so that's what I expect from young players. He's in his development stage at the moment, which is scary. So could you imagine him maybe in 2 to 3 seasons? He hasn't finished growing, in my opinion. He's going to fill out even more, and we have to remember that with players, you can't teach speed, you can't teach power, and you can't teach agility. And he's got a lot of athleticism for his age. Midfield is one of the hardest positions to play. I've seen him play that kind of 8 role. I've seen him play deeper, like almost like a 6, where he takes the ball off the centre backs and he gets on the half turn, gets his head forward. He always wants to play forward. It just takes a good coach now, good coaching to take him up to the next level. So then you stop seeing those type of mistakes, and a bit of experience around him, the right type of experienced players. Yep. Hopefully they will be implemented. If not this summer, maybe in January or summers to come, that could raise his game, raise his level, and we get to see the best of this player, because I think he's got it all. I think he really does. And the Swedish team, they're blessed, man. Right now, I think they're in their golden era, because they've got other players that are coming through, and he's one of their youngest, right? He's only 19.
Yep.
Scary.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people are harsh on him, saying, what's he doing? But we're judging him on his first season like he's one of the senior pros. Do you understand? Do you get it? So for me, I'm like, in this environment, in this type of club, like, this is nothing but education for him. Nothing but mentality building, character building, personality building, leadership building, all the type of things, the minerals that you want for your player. You want them to kind of harness in the dark, grow in the dark, like a little leaf, like a little plant that's growing through the concrete cracks of Tottenham Highway. Do you understand? That's Bergvall for me. And if he can improve on the things like, the final third things, where his final pass, maybe his through balls, his shooting, like Dave was saying, his decision making, when to dribble, when not to, he can be something special, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do agree. And like I say, nice words on Lucas Bergvall. And also a lovely little caption that he's put on his own Instagram page. I'm just going to read out, which again, he did write this. He wasn't forced, by the way, when I read this out. Many might think he might have been forced. Last year, I chose to come here. This year, I chose to stay here. That's Lucas Bergvall's words, coming you Spurs. And we've had an official statement dropped by the football club where they've said, we are delighted to announce Lucas Bergvall has signed a new contract with the club, which will run until 2031. Having reached agreement with the club in February 2024, Lucas joined us later that year on the 1st of July from Swedish Eleven side Djurgården. An excellent debut season has seen the 19-year-old make a total of 45 appearances in all comps to date, with his first coming against Leicester in our opening game of the 24-25 season. He entered his first goal for the club in a 1-0 win over Liverpool in the Carabao Cup semi-final, first leg in January 2025. He has 4 assists to his name across fixtures in the Premier League and UEFA Europa League. After representing Sweden at under-21, under-19 and under-17s levels, Lucas made his senior international debut in January 2024 against Estonia and has made 4 appearances for his country to date. Well, look, Tottenham have locked down Lucas Bergvall on that new 6-year deal until 2031. He is not going anywhere for now. And just like us, he's stuck with Tottenham. So, look, we're going to go for our final break of this show. We're going to bring in very quickly just some of the latest transfer news that is winging its way around the Spurs community over the last 24, 48, 72 hours. And then we're going to look ahead to Bodo. Reports are suggesting that Mark Gahey from Palace remains on Tottenham Hotspur shortlist ahead of the summer transfer window. There is a possibility that Gahey goes on a free transfer in 2026 if a deal can't be agreed this summer with Crystal Palace. As I mentioned to you earlier, there is numerous reports suggesting that Yves Bissouma is being shown a huge amount of interest from the Saudi Pro League. He has dropped out of really any contention to start under Ange Postecoglou so far. And Tottenham, we understand in the background, are actively still working, as Dave alluded to earlier, on a new deal for Rodrigo Bentancur. That is despite the Uruguayan being targeted by Atletico Madrid in a double deal alongside, as we know, Christian Romero, who has reportedly in this last week given the seal of approval to the Spanish club that he would like to join them this summer. However, that operation is understood to not be easy, as Tottenham and Atletico Madrid will lock horns in the summer, you would feel, to try and negotiate a bid, which from Spurs, we understand, are not looking to sell the vice-captain for anything less than around the £60 million mark. However, there is expected to be a ballpark meet in the middle where, as we know, Romero is keen to go, it feels. Tottenham, given their issues around PSR, or I'd say lack of issues around PSR, more the fact that Tottenham don't appear to want to be spending a huge amount of money this summer, would generate a sizable amount through Romero's sale. So it's one to keep an eye on. In terms of also players going out through the door, as we mentioned earlier in the show, Richarlison is reportedly a target for Everton in a sensational move back to Goodison. David Moyes, a manager that obviously is well known to the Premier League, has always had a keen eye for Richarlison. And look, let's not get about it. His best form really for Richarlison in the Premier League was in an Everton shirt. So it remains to be seen if that move does materialise in the summer. Jack Grealish, a name that hasn't gone away, as many know in the Spurs fan base, is reportedly set to leave Man City at the end of the season. And Tottenham are reportedly once again at the front of the queue to secure his signature. I mean, these are similar names, guys, that we've been hearing banded around, G, to come over to you. I mean, over the last 18 months, 24 months, I mean, can you see any of them potentially coming off at the moment, G?
Well, I mean, Guehi probably can do if we get rid of Romero, but how many times have we seen this story before where we actually have a good player and we do not know how to sell them properly? And that's kind of like what the guys were talking about earlier when we were talking about transfers. I think something that Spurs have been horrible at is being able to sell players, which is then, it's weird. It's now how we ended up being in this needing to sell to buy situation, because we've never been good at it in the past. So we then don't have the funds to replace those guys with quality players. So, yeah, I don't know. And I think the Grealish thing, I think that's all stuff to do with like agent talk and whatnot. I think it's long past the chance to bring him in, and we'll be bringing him in at the tail end of his career anyway. So I don't really see many of those happening. I think it's all just a load of bollocks at the moment, to be honest with you, especially with the especially with all the season ticket stuff going on. So yeah, just being honest, I think we just have to prepare ourselves to go through another summer of finding your Greys, your Bergvall. I say finding Greys still costs a lot of money, but finding more Bergvalls, 8.5 million. And look, it's not to say that stuff can't be done, because at the end, we've shot ourselves in the foot and put ourselves in a position where we are going to have to try and be smart with our transfers and look for more hidden gems. But we've just been through this so many times. The fact that we reached a point under Pochettino where we had the regular Champions League, we got to a final, we got to semi-finals of the Cups. That was the right time to then kick on. Then you had to better the first team to get over the line, and we didn't do that. And we've been struggling with that since. And unfortunately, that whole squad, let alone the team, got super stale, and we've had to do a massive rejig over the last couple of years after Kane's departure. And we're still going to have to do it again. Because like Ash said earlier, we had how many of last summer's was dead wood, but now all of a sudden we're saying we've got to get rid of about 10 players who are dead wood this season. So the amount of changing we're still going to have to do in this, and not every transfer is going to pay off, but it's just, it feels like with what we've been through and what we were promised from the ownership, saying we're going to be this economic superpower, other teams are going to get done in with by PSR and whatever, so we're going to be the team that people are going to have to come to. That's not happened. People have always found a way around the rules. And for me, it ultimately comes down from a willingness of the owners to actually put the money in to build a football team. That's not what they want to do. They're building an entertainment arena at the end of the day that has a football team in it. And they're effectively doing the bare minimum of, okay, well, we need the revenue from a European competition. Let's try and buy these youngsters or a certain level of player to get us to that position. It's never been, we're going to do everything in our power to become the best team in the country, which, okay, Newcastle as an example, they might be shackled in terms of PSR because they didn't have the revenue from before, but you can see the willingness from the owners to want to create a team, and they won something within 3 years. We just simply don't have that desire within the club. And I think Ange mentioned it, other managers like Mourinho, Conte, whatever, they've all mentioned it before. So you can understand why everyone's frustrated, and we just got to a situation where it's, how many times are we just going to have to recover from the previous era? We're now going to have to recover from this Ange era, and then whoever the next one is, we're going to have to recover from that era, and it's a never-ending cycle.
It does feel on this point, Dave, that we are in almost like, and I'm going to come over to Ash as well in a second, we're in continuous rebuilds. I mean, I forgot when we're not in it's come to a point where I forgot what a season looks like when we're not in a rebuild or we're not in a transition, because it feels like we've been forever in a transition or a rebuild season. I mean, how important do you think, Dave, when you're hearing the likes of Richarlison being linked to either move this summer back to Everton, you're hearing the likes of Bissouma being linked to the Saudi Pro League. How important do you think it might be to find some of these players that don't have a future at the football club a move to kind of rack up decent money to invest it back into the football club, if, by Daniel Levy's words, as we obviously heard earlier in the year, that we can't buy what we haven't got, regardless of what they can do PSR wise, which we know they're on the right side of PSR. They just simply, as to some of George's words, are in effect, maybe just don't want to spend the money.
Well, yeah, look, we know that. I mean, it's why we are where we are, right? We look, George brought up Newcastle there. The thing is, Newcastle ain't panicking and selling their best players to be able to kick on. They've built a good squad, and they're okay to hold right now until the scope becomes available to kick on. We're selling our best players, and we can sit here and say, oh, we're forced to, they want to leave. But why did they want to leave? Because they have ambitions to go and win. And when they sit there every summer and look at the transfer window and in January and go, right, who's coming in to help kick on to meet my ambitions? And they're seeing kids and unknowns walk in, players that they have to Google a lot of the time. No wonder why they're bouncing out of this football club. And we get butthurt by it and put up no resistance to it. We can't keep doing that. At some point, we've got to put up resistance to it and say, you told us you were building this stadium, diversifying all the revenue streams and everything else so that we didn't have to keep doing this. And now you're finding and justifying and finding reasons why we have to do it. I'm absolutely fed up with it. Like, we can sit here and praise the recruitment of your Greys and your Bergvalls and players like that. But the reality is, look where we are in the Premier League. We're on the cusp of relegation. So we can sit here and praise it. But the reality is, when you're sending your best players and you're bringing in this is why we are where we are. The whole idea of a football club that has ambition is you keep your best players. You build around them. You bring in other players to complement them, to play around them. We don't do that at Tottenham. And I'm absolutely fed up with it. And it's only going to get worse and worse. Like, we can sit here and blame all of this on Ange Postecoglou, like I've been trying to highlight all season. It's not all Ange's fault. You look at the mess we've got ourselves into in terms of the transfer windows. Any player that comes here, how many do we actually sell on for huge money? Very little. In fact, we make a loss on a lot of these players. And the reality is we come into this summer, you can look at the likes of your Richarlison and your Bissouma. Not being funny, what are they going to raise you? What, 40 million? What's that going to do in terms of really kicking this squad on in the summer? It's not going to do an awful lot. And you've also taken massive hits on them, which is putting yourself in further debt. The only way out of this is by selling your top player for as much as you can. You can't keep going down this route. We're getting worse and worse because of it. And at the end of the day, we're now left here. Like everyone says, we'll benefit from selling Harry Kane. I'm watching the worst football I've ever seen in my lifetime going forward for Tottenham Hotspur. People are going to say, we're going to benefit from selling Romero. We're already leaking goals. Imagine how much more leaking we're going to be without him. You know what I mean? Can't keep doing this. If we really want to kick on and match the fans' ambitions, we've got to start putting up some resolve and say, look, I don't care if he wants to leave. The reason why he wants to leave is because he wins trophies. Go out and have a summer that actually matches his ambition and get him to sign on the dotted line. It's becoming a common occurrence. And Conte told us, keep changing manager, things ain't going to change. There's so much internally inside the football club that need to change. And we've forgotten about what he said. It's got to the point where Ange Postecoglou is actually sidetracking the whole thing. And no one's actually really understanding the severity of the problems out inside the football club. And that's, again, why he's in the job, because he's shielding everybody. But as this season comes, as we come out of this season, all these little things are going to start coming to highlight, and that's where we're going to start being concerned. But by then it's too late. Right now, because over the summer, there's not really going to be any protest. There really won't, because we're in the transfer market, everything else. That's why right now is the time to act and put pressure on this board to find a way out of this. If not, do the right thing and sell this football club into the hands of someone that actually wants to take it forward.
Do you think on that point there that David's mentioned, Ash, do you think by the fact that Bergvall has reaffirmed his commitment to the football club, a 6-year contract, does that give you confidence that he sees any kind of a plan at Tottenham? Or do you think as a player he just thinks, you know what, if I just keep progressing the way I am, and when he looks at Tottenham as a football club, the reality is that if you're good enough in the future, big clubs will come in for you? Because it does feel like with Tottenham now as we are, that we feel like we've gone back to being a bit of a stepping stone as a club. We're no longer that club that you come to, that you genuinely think, I'm going to come here and win trophies. We're going to come on to the fact we've obviously got a massive opportunity to win a trophy very, very shortly. But what do you think the mindset of someone like Bergvall, who's signed a new contract, should that give fans some confidence that by the fact he's penned a new deal, that there is a brighter future around the corner potentially?
Yeah, it gives fans hope. But the reality of it is, with players like Bergvall, we need to supplement them with actual players, seniority that can help the club move up from where we are at the moment, which is 16th in the table. And that's where the concern is for a lot of fans. And the Bergvall, don't get me wrong, Bergvall is a terrific signing for us. And I think when he came to the club, I'm not sure if he thought he would get this much football starting of it. And I think he had that discussion with his parents, and that might have been a big factor of why he's possibly signed on. Maybe that's the reason why he's more positive about where he is at the club and how his career is doing. And he probably thought he would get a few cup games and he would get blooded in maybe towards the end of the season, not knowing that he's been a mainstay and he's forced his way into the actual starting 11. I don't know if that's a reflection on the squad, and a poor reflection of that, or it's just the quality of the player that he was able to break into the side. I'll leave that to you guys to figure out and fans to decide for themselves. I won't get into the pedantics, but the fact remains that, coming into this window, every fan has said, we want a 6. We need a defensive midfielder to shore up and stop all of these, games from losing, being so open, getting on these transitions, being exposed. Everybody wants that kind of security where they've got a midfielder that can win that ball back, a bit like a Wanyama, someone that's physical and plays that ball and gives it to the other players to progress forward. We haven't quite got that at the moment. We've tried numerous amount of players in that position, and it hasn't quite worked out. And my concern is we're not going to see that type of player come in. I don't know if that's a priority for the club. If they've got that in their minds, they're going to probably look for maybe a centre-back or a different position that not all the fans think is a priority. Just back to Dave's point, to be fair, though, Ange Postecoglou came in and he probably knew the remit, and that's probably the reason why he got the job.
Yeah.
And he was always going to take an uphill battle with him joining Spurs of a club like this. But he knew what he was getting himself into. I'm being totally honest. So I can't really say there and say, Ange, it's not fair, that we do this to managers, which is not. It's not fair we do this to managers. But every manager that comes on, takes the project on, they know exactly what the remit is and what they've got to do. So whether he's here next season or we get someone else, we just need someone that can work within this particular ownership, because I can't see them going anywhere. However, I still think we need to make our voices heard, because this is not a ship.
Yep.
It really is. We are the lifeblood of this club, and we need to move accordingly. We can't just be, like some people are complaining that players, they got no backbone. The players are like jellyfish. Do you know what I'm saying? They've got no, spine, and they've got no viciousness. They're too soft. And so we as fans, we can't be soft either. We can't call the players out, for not being, strong. I'm not saying we need to be aggressive, but like make yourself be known, make yourself being heard. So if you're not happy with the state of the club, you're not happy with this transfer business, you keep feeling like you're being duped. I wouldn't even say lied to, because I feel like it's a Scooby-Doo, like when the man just pulls the mask off and it was like, it was me all along. That's what I feel like we keep getting, because I will come out and say, we're not getting money spent on, and then someone will come out with a financial report and say, no, actually, Spurs have spent 700 million, and you're like, well, the money's been spent bad, and then there's something else. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
I always feel like there's always. So right now, we need to take control of our club, and we just need to just say it how it is, bro. We just need, if we're not happy, we need to bind together. Me personally, I just want more than 17th, because I feel like we're going to finish.
Listen, do you know what I mean?
Go on.
On that point, I mean, we all want more than 17th. Sorry, Dave, do you want to come back in?
No, I was just going to say quickly, but this is where the transfer window is important, and this is where, when you look at the squad now, heading into this summer, we need to sign established quality. That's what this team is lacking. It's lacking that bit of quality in the final third, that body in midfield, and maybe one across the back line as well. Essentially, what we're doing is we're just gambling all of our money away every time we're going to purchase a player, because you're actually looking through the weeds of Europe, all these clubs, and trying to find that gem. That's what we've done the last few years. We spent all our money on trying to find that gem, and hopefully he comes good. You're gambling your money, and it annoys me, because when it comes to maybe splashing the cash or splurging out a little bit more to get that quality, he doesn't want to take the gamble. But in a sense, what he doesn't understand is when you're going through, trying to find these gems all the time, you're gambling your money more than what you are trying to put it onto a sure thing. And I think right now, if we have another summer where we're going across to the Swedish second league, out to Korea and stuff like that, trying to find all these gambles, we're not going to kick on in the Premier League next season. We're just not. You're going to see, to a degree, the same sort of season happen, because we've got a very young squad, and I'm not being funny, but you to go back and look at a lot of the games that we've played and a lot of the goals we've conceded, they're silly individual errors that experienced players just do not make, and that's where it comes back to bite you. So as much as we need a new manager change, we also need a change in transfer strategy, and we have to start bringing in quality.
I totally agree. Look, we are now going to go for that final break of this show for our listeners and audio, and we're going to finally get there to what, as we know, is Spurs' biggest game in their season. Helping me do it for our listeners and audio, we've got the wonderful Terry Flatby, one of the most prominent, I've got to say, correspondents out there when it comes to Norwegian football, covers Bodo in general, and has given us a great preview as to what we would expect and what we may be thinking is coming our way. For our watching audience here, thank you ever so much as always for joining us. Yes, we are slightly earlier than usual. I won't tell you why we're slightly earlier than usual, but we're going to try and get off before there's any live football taking place for a certain aspect and a certain reason, which I hope many of you do understand as to why. We want to make sure we're offline before, so it kicks off in the other part of London. I hope you can appreciate that and understand why that is the case. But for Tottenham, as we know, this is what it comes down to this season. 1 or 2 games for Tottenham against Bodo Glimt, which, as we've said, for Tottenham is going to really, let's not beat about the bush, going to finalise the outcome of this season, what it means for Tottenham. Can they somehow, over 2 legs, get themselves to a Europa League final and go on and win it? Or is there a concern and more round the corner? I'm going to start, if I can, George, with you in terms of this game, because, look, for Bodo Glimt, we've never played them before. It's the first competitive match between the two sides. Look, they're a side that, to be fair to them, they're a surprise name in the Final Four of this season's Europa League. You know, they've been shaking up the Scandinavian scene ever since their maiden title in 2020. It should not be a massive shock that who they're being led by in terms of Ketil Knutsen has become, well, the first Norwegian side to reach the semi-finals of a senior UEFA men's club competition. And this is a side that won back-to-back titles between the 23-24 season, and they're entering the current 25 calendar year as favourites to retain the title, winning 3 and drawing 1 of their opening quartet matches in the Swedish league. I think it goes back to the likes of, you know, the Rosenborg days in terms of a Swedish side really coming into Europe's own and the way they've performed. I mean, how important is it, George, for you, we don't underestimate this team, despite the depletion of injuries, which we'll come on to?
Yeah, listen, look, you definitely can't underestimate, because at the end of the day, you can talk about, I don't know, the history of the club or whatever, like the fact that if you looked at the four, you would on paper say that Bodo Glimt is the weakest of them. But at the end of the day, they are there for a reason. They've had some very good results in the Europa League this year, and they've done very well against your Galatasaray and so on. The only thing I will say, though, is that their away record has not been great at all in the Europa League. I think they've managed 1 win against Braga, which was a 2-1 win. And I think they scored 2 goals at United, but United still managed to win the game, and they've been just as bad as we've been recently. So I think the importance for me, as what the guys touched on right at the beginning, is that we have to come out of this home game far and away ahead of this tie. Your 3-0, your 4-0. And that's not even to put a disrespect on them as a club. It's just, we know going into that away leg where they've been very good at the home, they're playing very attacking at home, the fact that they managed to get some really good results at home, we know we need to go into that second leg with a sizable lead. And I think we're going to have the atmosphere on the Thursday. I think the players, we've touched on it earlier as well, they're going to be motivated for it because they need it. They need it for themselves. They need it for the club. They simply cannot go into next season finishing 17th or whatever it is and not having a trophy alongside that either. They simply can't. And we saw that from the Frankfurt game, how they are motivated in the Europa League. So it is possible. And as you said, we're probably going to touch on it now, but they are missing a few key players, which will also help into our hands. So yeah, even with the fans, in terms of our fans, the fact that there were 20,000 people waiting to get tickets.
Yep. They were 20,000 people waiting to get tickets there, as George has just frozen for us.
Am I back?
We've got you, George. We've got you. Can I just say on that point, George comes back into focus as well. I realise I've just dropped the bollock in the conversation where I think I said they were I think I said they were a, forgive me, I'm in complete holiday mode here. I think I may have said Norwegian or Swedish side. So please let me do correct that. Of course, we're playing a side that obviously is very well known in Sweden, that, you know, for them, they've got very, very far in the competition. Please carry on, George, on your point.
Yeah, I was just saying that I think even the fact that we had 20,000 people waiting to get tickets for this game, you can tell the fans that are going to be there on the day are going to be up for it. And we're going to, hopefully give them hell. So I'm really looking forward to Thursday myself. And I do honestly believe that we're going to come out of it with a great result. And it's just a matter of how do we handle them away next week.
I've got to laugh as I'm doing this show. I think I've just doubled down on the fact I think I've just said they're Swedish. They are not Swedish. They are from Norway. Come on. Third time I'm asking. Ashley, we come round to you. Sorry, can you get us back on track here? Because I'm clearly in holiday mode. I haven't got a clue what I'm talking about. Oh, I tell you.
Yeah, I was like, I thought they were Norwegian.
Are you sure?
How
much has Ricky had to drink here? I've just doubled down on the fact they're from Sweden. They are Norway, just to be clear.
You're on a beach.
Yeah, go on the beach. I'm going to hopefully get there at some point. I'll tell you, I'm running to the beach, I think, at the moment. Look, just on the point George mentioned there, they have got a number of casualties, suspensions going into this game. For them, they've got a combination, just to be clear, of the two of them. They've got centre-back Odin, forgive me on this pronunciation, guys, I'm not the greatest, Odin Bujulf, who was full stop with a groin issue in the second half of Bodo Glimt's 3-0 win over KFUM on Sunday. On top of that, they are also missing influential Patrick Berg, suspended for the first leg due to an accumulation of Europa League yellow cards, with midfield partner Hakon Evgen also ruled out for the same reason. And finally, Andreas Helmersson, who scored a vital goal in the extra time against Lazio in the quarterfinals, is also banned after he was sent off at the Stadio Olimpico. how much confidence should there be, Ash, the fact that they've got, some really key players missing there that we can hopefully, I think, as we've said earlier, try and put the tie to bed in the first leg? Is that being realistic or is that being more optimistic?
No, it's realistic in my opinion, because Patrick Berg is the key player that he's the one that makes their team tick. He's the one that kind of strings everything together. He's the puppet master. He's the one that dictates play, controls the tempo, knows when to play it short, when to go long, etc., etc. Can affect the final third as well as help him with defensive attributes. He's their captain, so that's a big miss for them, in my opinion. They have got other players that I was looking at just really quickly on YouTube before I came on, and they've got a few, they've got one or two forwards. They've got one forward I looked at and I thought he looks decent. Ball kind of sticks to him. It could cause us some trouble. But like you said, 5 key players, and we are going into it full strength. There can be no excuses. Let's make that straight. Let's get it. Let's be real. Nice. So we're at home as well, as we said before. We're gonna have to have the crowd. They're gonna have to be the 12th man and make it really intimidating, as we said before. And if we do, this is the one time I actually want to see us do the high press, do high line, the rest of it, things that we've been criticizing. I think we need to take the game to them, no matter what, and we just need to go all out. People will say, "Oh no, you shouldn't do that," because they could sit in a low block or a mid block and then hit us in the transition, hitting the counters. We just need to believe in what we have and kind of go for it. There's no point holding back and trying to sit off them and allow them to come up. And I think we just, at this point of the season, we haven't had that much time to kind of quickly swap around and have that, sit down and go through videos and coaching and stuff and say, all right, this is what we're going to do to prepare. We literally just got thrashed at Anfield 5-1. Yeah. So from there to now, Thursday's around the corner, we're going to just have to go into that game knowing what we've been practicing all season and just go for it, in my opinion. Yeah. You know what I mean?
On the points we're saying here, Dave, we made 8 changes, as I mentioned earlier in the show, for the Liverpool game, which is the most we've ever made in terms of the Premier League alone. So there can be no argument now that when it comes to what the focus is, as we know, it's obviously on this 2-legged tie against Bodo. But the fact they've got a number of players missing, it makes it even harder then to justify any reason why we should not be coming out of this first leg alone with a real positive scoreline. But I think, as me and George have alluded to earlier, you cannot underestimate this side because they've got to the last 4. They've beaten some good teams along the way. How important is that given the season that we've had, Dave, as you know, with the teams that we've played against and some of the nature of the players' performances, that we don't go into this game, I wouldn't use the word cocky, but not taking the opposition seriously enough?
Well, I mean, if they are, I'm concerned. I mean, they've lost, 20-odd games across all competitions this season. I mean, who are they to go in and take, cocky into this game and stuff like that? I mean, they should be going into this game motivated by the fear of not being upset by Bodo Glimt. To put Tamworth in the back of their mind, how nearly they were embarrassed then. Go out there with a point to prove. At the end of the day, they took their foot off the gas in the Premier League for this competition. So I'm not being funny. I expect them to go out there and turn up, this Thursday. It's an expectancy. All season long we've heard, just turn up. The fans always turn up. We're there the stadium sold out nearly every week. Millions around the world are sitting in front of their TVs watching Tottenham Hotspur. We always turn up. Now it's on to them players. Now it's up to you to turn up. Go and do the job. What we can't do is leave this in Bodo's hands or leave them with a glimmer of hope heading into the second leg. We have to use this home advantage just to demoralize them and take the game from them altogether. Look, as much as we shouldn't be overconfident, we should always also be looking at it and going, we're never going to get a better chance to get to a European final. An easier game. We've got to take that into our own hands at the end of the day. Look, the warning signs are there. Honestly, sort of along this Europa League fan, I don't know how many other fans have felt like me, but on this Europa League run, I've sort of been going, where's the slip up? When's it going to happen? And I just hope it's not this game. But at the end of the day, on our day, we do have enough to be able to put them to bed. And I would urge the fans, just from the fans' point of view, I get we're so demoralized with what's going on at the football club. Some of the news that's come out about, what we can do this summer, some of the players, the manager, the recruitment team. But at the end of the day, we might not be back here for a long, long time. We haven't been in the semi-final of Europe since Pochettino, and look at the struggles and the dark days we've had since then. So from a fan's perspective, I would urge every fan who's rocking up, sitting in front of their TV watching the game, enjoy yourselves, enjoy the occasion, because honestly, it could be another 6-7 years, if not long, before we're back here again. So don't sit in front of the TV with anger, sit in front of the TV with joy that we're there, and let's see what we can do.
On this point, just to close, guys, does it feel, George, does it feel like for many the biggest month or biggest couple of months being a Spurs fan in recent history, given what it feels is at stake for the football club, first European trophy we could win for over 40 years, the element of the fact that what goes into the summer, what it could mean for the club, what it could mean for the fans, on the back of the season that we've had, do you feel it's as big as that, or are we overplaying it when we say, in terms of our modern history, this is a massive, massive couple of months in storage, G, for us?
No, this is huge, and sorry if you can hear my dogs barking.
No, it's
they're
fine.
just outside.
No worries.
there.
No worries.
No, it absolutely is. Especially since probably the Champions League final, right? But then the Champions League was like so well and above and beyond what we thought we could achieve, especially at the time. So it almost seemed like so far out of reach. Whereas, look, we've been pining for the Europa League for decades, and it's been 40 odd years since we actually won it last time round. And I think. And as you know, Dave said, what better chance do we have to get to a final and potentially play either, Man United or Athletic Bilbao to get there? And I think, as you said as well, with the fact that we've got everything going on, we sort of, in a way, desperately need this. One, for us as fans. Two, for the club itself when it comes to being in the Champions League next year and being able to attract that quality as we look to rebuild this team that's mid-rebuild itself. But no, and I think, for me, especially when just looking at it from a fan's perspective, how many times in the last 15 odd years have we got to semi-finals and never progressed, or even when we did get to a final and the biggest one in our lifetimes, it's all over within 30 seconds. I think it's absolutely fair to say that this is one of the most important months in our recent history, because the ramifications of winning this trophy is just incredible for fans as well as the club.
Yeah, and I think I've made a conscious effort to try and keep it on, players. I mean, look, everyone knows the spectator games will mean for him, and we know that his record against Bodo Glimt hasn't been the greatest, as we know his time at Celtic. He didn't have a positive experience when he played them twice over the two legs when he was manager of them, and the reality is that we're going to need an improvement in terms of that if Tottenham are to get through. So, I mean, just to ash on that point, as I said there, how important is it that Ange, tactically wise, which many will laugh at when I say this, because I know there's many that, again, feel that tactically wise, that is a big, big problem with Ange Postecoglou. How important is it that he does get it right? Because you could argue in the first leg, I think, as we said earlier, given the nature of the injuries that they've got, the depletion of their squad, you could maybe play a bit more of a higher line-up. You could maybe take it in a bit more of an aggressive style. Maybe the second leg will be a leg to maybe sit back, soak the pressure up, go at them. But again, it all really depends on what comes in that first leg and the result of that first leg. Is it really important that we do see a very much kind of front foot Tottenham, take the game to the opposition? We know the Spurs fans are going to be right behind the players from as soon as that whistle blows. This is a great, great opportunity to really, in the first leg, give ourselves a massive, massive advantage going into that second leg of the tie next week.
Yeah, I mean, you look at our players, we've got Tell, whether you like him or not, not everyone's a fan of him. There's a mixed review about him so far, but he's able to go on the inside at times. Times he's able to go on the outside and whip a ball into the box. And I think that's important for whoever starts up front. I'm assuming it would be Solanke to get on the end of things. And then you've got Bodø as well that's able to fire crosses into the box as well. So from that point of view, I don't think Solanke's really had that type of service going into games. What we saw with Richarlison, in comparison, he had loads of crosses in a game before Liverpool where he could have scored a numerous amounts of headers. Didn't quite come off for him, but I'd like to see Solanke in the box a lot more, higher up the pitch. And the problem is when we do get into that final third, it seems to break down a lot of the time. I think that's where a lot of fans are worried if Bodo Glimt were to do like a 4-4-2, kind of like sit back, mid-block, low block, and frustrate the players. We need to be adventurous. We need to be brave, not afraid to make mistakes, get to the byline, do what we used to do back in the day and do some lovely cutbacks. We need Brennan Johnson, when he does come on, for maybe Odobert, maybe to do those low cross balls across the box with someone else, finish it in the back post or vice versa, where Johnson got to the back of the end of the ball and he finishes at back post. You know, we need all those type of goals as well. So we just need the variation of attacks, and we just need to take it to them. And Maddison, we need his best game. We need him to show up. We can't have any players hiding at all. And I wouldn't be mad. You know, some people say it's too gun-ho if we had both Maddison and Kulu starting at the same time. I'm like, you know what? F it. Like, just go for it. Like, if we're going to have to do that and it's going to create more opportunities for the team, then I'm all for it. Like, I'll just say throw the kitchen sink at them.
Absolutely.
And just literally go for it. But, hey, I'm just a fan.
Listen, and we love you for it. Dave, kick us off. How are we going to put to bed this Norwegian side over 2 legs? I would need Dave to unmute. And it's not me that's doing that. It's on Dave's control.
No, sorry. I think the home leg, I think the game plan has to be, you have to go and play them. I'm okay with us playing the highline. I actually, you know, when you've got Romero and Van de Ven, especially against these weaker teams, they just mop everything up on the halfway line and keep us camped in their half, which is essentially what we need. But it's about picking the right pieces around that. I think Pedro Porro, as much as he's a defensive, weakness, I think he's got 3 goals, 8 assists across all competitions this season. I think with the aim of the game to go and score goals, I think you can afford to play him in the home leg, but maybe not play him in the away leg. I would probably go with Jed Spence, to be honest, at left back. I think, look, Destiny Udogi's been good recent games, but I just don't think we have the same attacking output down the left-hand side when he plays as when Jed Spence plays. I think Jed Spence just opens it up a bit more. But I think the winger choice is absolutely crucial. I don't want to see Brennan Johnson anywhere near that team sheet if we're looking to go and score goals and create goals, because at the end of the day, we know they're going to come and sit here against low block. Now, when you sit low block, you tend to make sure you block up the middle in around your box protected, which means you're not going to have much space to play in there, which means they usually want you to go out wide and put balls in the box. So we just have to do that. Once you start doing that, gaps will start to appear in the middle. You'll start pulling people out of place. So the wingers selection is absolutely crucial. Me personally, I would go with Tellen Odebar, like we've seen against Nottingham Forest. Now, I know to a degree Nottingham Forest allowed us to do it. But when they're sitting every man behind the ball, you need people that can get on the ball and take players out of the game, skin them. And that's what Tellen Odebar do compared to maybe what Son and Johnson offer. Son and Johnson play very safe in this system, usually cut back, pass the ball backwards. Tellen Odebar want that ball, want to take on them, and that's absolutely crucial. And when it comes down to striker, I'd actually go with Richarlison up front for this game. I just think when you look at it, and I think, in the last, 28 starts under Postecoglou, over his time here, Richarlison has 1 or 22 goal contributions, which is a good record. We speak about Dom Solanke struggling. Maybe we're not providing him a lot of chances. But Richarlison seems to be able to find goals in this system. And any time he's come back this system, he's come into the team and he scored goals. And when you take on what Postecoglou said in his pre-match press conference, when he was asked about maybe the difference between Solanke and Richarlison, he praised Richarlison's in the box work. He said Dom works more outside the box. Richarlison works more inside the box. He's a hunter in the box. He's good in the 18-yard box. So if we're looking to go and score goals and get people on the end of crosses, you've got to go with Richarlison. And I think in order for us to come out the right side of this, the starting lineup is absolutely key. If he goes with Solanke, Johnson, and maybe Son if he's back fit, I mean, how many defenses have they unlocked this season? How boring has it been watching them? So I think the game becomes a longer game. The fans then become a bit tetchy, a bit nervous, and I think the atmosphere absolutely dies. I think he's got to pick an electric front line that wants to go after the game and go and score goals and feed off the early energy of the fans. That's very important heading into this game. You do that, we could go 3-4-0 here. And then the away game, if you do that at the home game, the away game is just about going, come at us, Richarlison, maybe one of your wingers, or Dom Solanke, whoever starts, just sit up there, wait for the ball in behind and go. We don't even need to play a highlight, nothing. Just literally put the ball in behind them and look to counter them.
I'd be more intrigued if I could. I'd love to see Solanke and Richie maybe start the game together. I think I don't see a way personally, Dave. I don't think he drops Solanke because I think he's always played Solanke in the big games, and
but I think he might come back to bite us.
Maybe,
but I think I want Solanke to have the service that Richarlison got with Odegaard. I think play those 3 for me has got to be the one.
Yes, I agree.
Because if you look at Solanke last year for Bournemouth, he scored loads of different types of goals. He scored tap-ins, he scored headers, he scored a header against Liverpool the weekend. So it's not that he can't do it. It just feels like whenever we do play Solanke, it's always with a Son Johnson who just simply aren't getting the ball to him.
It's because Richarlison has got the skill set to do what Solanke does, and that's the reason why they play Solanke in that role. But that's why I said I think starting with Tel, I know people don't really rate him, or some people like him, but having Tel and then Tel and Odobert to give him the same service that Richarlison got that game, it'll be interesting to see, because I think at one point Solanke got the most headed goals in the Premier League for the line when he was at Bournemouth. So why not give him that service? And then when I mentioned Johnson, I'm not a fan of Johnson, but I'm just saying if Odobert was to come off or Tel was to come off, then Johnson with tired legs, maybe he fires across a ball across the box, or he gets on the end or something and he taps it in. So I think Johnson's more effective coming off the bench, if that makes sense. But yeah, I hear what you're saying though, Irish, because you're saying in terms of Richie has come in basically, and
he knows how to sniff out a chance.
Yeah, you know what I mean? He's been aggressive.
He knows the net is. He knows the net is.
But that's great to have him come off the bench though as well. If you've got that option.
I just think you've got a real opportunity in this first leg. As Dave said earlier, we know what's coming in the second leg. We don't want to go into the second leg in a situation where we may need to go and get something out there, because I think that could be a difficult place to go. Although Frankfurt was also a difficult place to go and we got it done. So it remains to be seen. Guys, we'll close. Let's get predictions. Let's start with you, G. What are you going for?
I want it to be more, but I think it's going to be a 3-1 win. I think they've only not scored away once, winning a 0-0 draw. So I think they might, and we know what we're like. We'll concede a goal for some utter sheer embarrassing pass or whatever. But I do think we're going to get the win, and we'll get a few goals. I just want more than that. I want us to win by 3 minimum. But yeah, I'll say 3-1.
G, thank you so much. I promise you that on Sunday there'll be someone with more of a geographical sense that will be a lot more accustomed to dealing with these conversations. AK Richard Cracknell, wonderful train driver. He'll drive us on to success, I hope. D, thank you so much. I'm going to miss you for a couple of weeks as well, but you'll be back here very, very soon. Well, you'll be back, I think, next week as well to look ahead to the second leg. God help us as to what that's going to look like. Hopefully we're in a good position. D, what are we going for?
Do you know what? I'm going to go 3-0. I think a clean sheet is imperative. You don't want to give them any confidence whatsoever heading into that away leg. I think a 3-0, and I think we see her. I think we can start booking things to Bilbao, to be quite honest with you. So that's what I'm going to go with. Ricky, you enjoy your time away. It's much needed.
Thank you, my man.
I'm
Thank you very much.
Is booking one for myself as well. I could really do with one. And look, Spurs fans, make sure you get up for it Thursday night. Don't let the weight and the pressure of Tottenham Hotspur, go into that game in a negative mindset. It's a European semi-final. You cannot take that for granted. And also, Ash and George, it's been a pleasure. And everybody watching, run the likes up for Ricky and the boys.
Bless your heart, Dave. Thank you so much. Again, you can catch G over on his own channel, of course. George Achillea on all the socials. You can catch Dave, of course, at the RH Hotspur. Great coverage on a match day and also pre-match content as well. And, of course, Ash over at the Spurs Kings. How much we love the Spurs Kings in the community. Ash, you said earlier that we need to get a positive result. We do not want to be going into that second leg on an AstroTurf pitch. Artificial pitch, can I just say, given my lack of pronunciation and geographical sense on this show. Got to get that one right. What are we going for, Ash, on this first leg?
Yeah, man. Big up the panel as well. Big up Irish Hotspur as always, and George as well. I love having you on the panel. It's always been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Rory Aki.
Pleasure.
Big up the chat as well. People listening back afterwards. I'm gonna go for a 2-0.
2-0 to Tottenham. I have to check these things.
yeah. Spurs 2-0. I'm hoping for more. I'm hoping for more of a 3 or 4-0. 4-0 will be beautiful.
Wouldn't that be nice?
But my head saying maybe 2-0. It depends if we start fast. If we start fast,
I agree. You will know in the first 5 minutes, won't you? I mean, I think Poch said in the first 3 minutes or a minute of playing or managing Tottenham, he knew. We know very, very quickly. I want to say again a massive, massive thank you to this wonderful watching audience out there. I think we had only 3,000-4,000 that have been watching the show live. Again, guys, thank you so much for all incredible support. Listen, we've got 2 legs away from a European final against Norwegian champions. We need to go and get a result. Get behind the team. Let's see if we can get over the line and get ourselves to a 41-year wait where Tottenham can finally clinch European silverware again. From the wonderful Dave from the Orange Hotspur, from the brilliant George Achillea, from the superb Ash over at the Spurs Kings. We have been the last word on Spurs. Get behind the lads. Keep on liking. Keep on subscribing. And as always, come on, you Spurs.